Schoolteacher Kendra Pickering is suing her ex-boyfriend, fireman Charles Cannon, for the cost to attend a football game with the guys. Kendra says instead of paying her back, he went on another excursion with the guys.
Order. All rise.
That's just case number 321 on the calendar in the matter of Pickering versus Cannon.
Good. Thank you, Bird.
You're welcome, Judge. Parties have been sworn in, Your Honor. You may be seated.
Bird, would you do me a favor, please? You know that pesky fly that we had around here a couple of months ago?
Yep.
Well, he's been resurrected. So could you get me one of those little things that you got me before this?
No problem.
Thank you very much. And Miss Pickering and Mr. Cannon look like two well-behaved people, so I can manage without you for a minute.
Be right back.
Thank you. Miss Pickering, according to your complaint, you and the defendant were in a relationship and you made a loan to him. It was a loan so that he could take a trip, some sort of a bus trip, a sports trip with some other men. And you want the money back because the relationship is over.
Yes.
Mr. Cannon says that there was never a loan, that this was sort of a quid pro quo because he had arranged for refinancing on your house at some point. I know you're smiling. We'll get to it.
Okay.
He had arranged for refinancing on your house, saved you a whole bunch of money, and you agreed that he would be paid by you financing this trip. That's your defense.
That's correct, Your Honor.
Good. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, miss.
I know it was on the lip. Anyway, thank you. So, Ms. Pickering, were you and the defendant living together?
No, Your Honor, we were not. We were dating.
Objection.
Listen to me. Listen. Don't interrupt her. Do you understand?
Yes,
you will have an opportunity to speak when she's finished.
Yes, ma'am.
Go.
When I divorced my husband and moved back to South Carolina, Mr. Cannon was one of the people contracted to move my furniture back to South Carolina from Georgia. I was reintroduced to him at that time. We went to middle school together. Immediately after I returned, we began dating.
But never lived together?
Never lived together, but he spent most of the time with me. It was very, we talked about getting married. He talked about how it was destiny for us to be together.
Don't frustrate me.
Yes, ma'am. I was just saying, let's get to
No.
Yes.
When I look at your direction and ask you a question, you're going to speak.
Yes, ma'am.
Other than that, you're not going to speak.
Okay.
So when I said you didn't live together, the answer was we didn't live together, we dated.
We dated.
Fine. Tell me about this loan that you made to him, when that was, because there were two parts of the loan.
Exactly. Mr. Cannon and I had been supportive of each other, making small loans back and forth financially to help each other out when needed during the time that we dated. This particular occasion, in October, he sponsored a trip for the guys.
October of what year?
October of 2001. He sponsored a trip to a Falcons football game in Atlanta. At some point, he did not have the money to pay for the tickets. So he asked me if he could borrow the money.
How much money did you need?
It was $960 for the tickets. Although we had exchanged money before loaning process, I felt very uncomfortable with this amount.
Well, had the previous loans been smaller loans?
They had been much smaller, $50, $100, $150. So, and it had been repaid. Because I felt uncomfortable, I wrote the check to the travel agency.
Can I see that, please?
I would not write it to him, nor would I give him cash. I was under the assumption that when the guys boarded the bus, that they would pay the remaining balance. When they returned from the trip, I heard of how wonderful it was.
When was the trip?
The trip was in November.
Okay.
I heard of how wonderful it was and received a magnet, but not my money.
Okay.
At that point, I did not question him about it. I was hoping that he would do the right thing because, once again, this is someone I wanted to marry. Later on, in the 11th, November, he also borrowed money again and again in December.
Well, what did he borrow money in November for?
I was under the impression that it was Christmas gifts. During this time, I've been throwing hints that I wanted an engagement ring. I'm hoping that this was for that purpose.
So you were giving him money hoping that he would buy you a ring?
I was giving him money hoping that it would help him purchase the Christmas gifts for his children and then have extra to do what I wanted him to do.
How much did you give him in November?
In November, I gave him a check of $135, and I clearly marked on there that it was a loan. And in December, I also gave a check of $50, and I marked that that was a loan as well.
Miss Pickering, he hadn't paid you back the October money yet. Why are you giving him more money?
At that time, we were talking about moving in together. I was, lack of a better judgment, I was a fool for love.
Right. Okay. I'm not interested in these two little loans. I'm not interested in that because that comes under the category of stupidity. If you lend somebody almost $1,000 and they don't pay you back when they get off the bus, and you lend them another $50 and another $135, then you're not too smart.
But once again, Your Honor, he was promising me the whole time, making promises. This is someone.
Promises of what?
Of commitment, of relationship.
Just a second,
repaying.
I don't care about commitment relationship. That's not my job. You want to go commitment relationship, go on Jerry Springer. If you want to come here, this is a court. Court, exactly. You talk about if he's making statements to you, he's making statements about returning the money. Exactly. That's all I'm interested in.
And he had returned money in the past, and I indicated that it was a loan on the check.
I understand that, madam. You're not following me. If you give somebody almost $1,000, which you said to me a moment ago was more money than you had ever given them, and you thoroughly expected him to have the money as soon as he put his keister back on land where you were, and all he gave you was a magnet.
Yes, sir.
Right? Then when he comes to you and says, I need another $135, I need another $50, you say, you're not getting another penny, my dear, until I get back my $960. And if you do, deal with it. And I don't want to hear about commitment. Commitment, we go someplace else. Commitment, we don't deal with here. All right. Let me hear from you.
I'm glad you settled that for me, Your Honor.
Don't thank me yet. I'm not finished with you. Where's her $960?
Judge Judy continues in a moment.
So I, being the wonderful person that I am, tried to save her a lot of money by letting her go through one of my mortgage brokers.
What did that cost you?
It didn't cost me anything. What it did saved her thousands.
Right.
Real cases, real people. Judge Judy. Kendra Pickering says ex-boyfriend Charles Cannon owes for the cost to attend a football game with his friends. Charles says he saved her thousands by helping to refinance her mobile home.
Go ahead.
Actually, it should be a balance of $40 owed to me.
Just tell me where, honey.
Because at the time, right before, I think it was right around September, I was working part-time selling mobile homes. By doing that, I was involved and had relationships with several different mortgage companies. At the time, Ms. Pickering was talking about getting a house refinanced. She had went around to several different other mortgage companies.
I did not.
I don't want to hear you.
Thank you.
Talking. Keep talking. I can multitask.
Actually, she was thinking about refinancing the house through the mortgage company she was in at the time that she was thinking about refinance. So I, being the wonderful person that I am, tried to save her a lot of money by letting her go through one of my mortgage brokers.
And what did that cost you?
Actually, it didn't cost me anything. What it did, it saved her thousands.
Right. Didn't cost you anything.
So I agreed. I said, well, look, she's getting $13,000 back. I said, well, I agree to set you up with the guy. Just give me a $1,000 referral fee.
What kind of character are you?
We wasn't in a relationship. This is
what kind of a character
her imagination of this marriage.
Listen to me. What kind of character are you?
Wonderful. You know,
No. Not wonderful. Not
I had
wonderful.
to pay. Could you ask?
Wonderful.
Yes, ma'am.
And don't tell me no relationship, because although I'm not entertaining these things, clearly she gave you this money.
Well, it wasn't to the extent that she's saying, you know.
Don't give me extent. Whether you have a little extent, sir, that's your problem, or a bigger extent, that's maybe everybody's problem. He has a smaller extent, he won't acknowledge that.
Well,
listen to me very carefully. If you have even a smaller extent relationship, which will be your long-term problem.
Yes, ma'am.
Or not.
Yes, ma'am.
If you are in a relationship with somebody and intimate with somebody, and if they need something and it doesn't cost you anything, because you know somebody who can help her out getting refinancing for her house and you hook her up with that person, then you don't be a pig and say, well, I'm saving you all this money, so why don't you give me a little bit of money, because I saved you all that money. You say, I'm glad I could do something nice for you.
I mean, but
I was
only doing the American way.
But do it the American way with somebody else that you're not sleeping with, sir.
Well, Your Honor,
well, don't give me, well, Your Honor. You owe her $960. She gave it to you. Why don't you give the money back to her and say finished?
My point is, the big point is, this was not an issue until she came to my house one evening. And I said, look, I don't want to be bothered. Okay, this was over a year after. She didn't file this till after a year after.
I don't want to hear. Yeah, so?
It wasn't a big issue till she came to my house.
Yeah.
Way out of control. I said, look, I don't want to be bothered. I'm ready to move on. And the police department had to come by. They told her, look, ma'am, you need to leave. And then she came up with the issues about the money. And they said, well, if that's the problem, you need to go file it in court.
So if this lady is saying to you, this is standing in the way of my moving forward, clearly you benefited from this money. Clearly I gave it to you, $960.
Yes, ma'am.
I feel as if I've been used. You don't want a relationship anymore, and you don't want to return the money. Relationship, I can't force you, but the money, I want you to pay me. Then you give her the money. It didn't cost you any money, right? So you act like a man, whether you have a big commitment or a little commitment. You give her back the money. $960, judgment for the plaintiff, that's all.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
He knows that he's made promises of love, commitment, gave me a ring at Christmas, and now he denies all of this?
It was spoken about.
I'm just in awe at how he could lie.
And now the next case.
All parties in the matter of Stewart versus Cobb. Step forward, please.
Store manager Sandra Stewart is suing dietary aide Lynn Cobb for damaging her rental truck when she beat it with a stick. Lynn says she caught Sandra with her boyfriend.
All right, Miss Stewart, one evening you were sitting in a truck that you had rented. It was about 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning?
After 3.
And you were sitting in your truck with the handsome and affable Bruce, who happened to at that time have been her boyfriend.
Correct.
You didn't know her.
No.
And according to your complaint, Miss Cobb is out looking for Bruce and finds you and Bruce sitting in your rental truck.
Correct.
And proceeds to go ballistic on your truck.
Correct.
Hitting it with a stick and causing a whole bunch of damage for which you are responsible to the rental company, and they are billing you some $624. And you want Miss Cobb to pay.
Correct.
Miss Cobb says she didn't hit your truck, she just hit you. So tell me when this was and what you were doing sitting with the handsome and affable and I see absent Bruce.
Right. It happened on August the 31st of this year at my job. I was working for the Star and Press. My position was a field rep. I come in at 1 a.m., Bruce comes in at 3 a.m.
So you're like a dispatcher of newspapers?
Correct.
Okay, so go ahead.
Bruce comes in about 3:15. 5 or 6 minutes after Bruce was in the truck with me, we hear this little noisy car. A couple seconds later, this automobile pulls up in the tunnel, because we're in the tunnel. She jumps out of the car. I don't know what she...
the defendant.
Right. She comes over to the truck and she says something to Bruce, something about out all night long or something. I looks over at Bruce and I ask Bruce, who the F is this? Bruce, who is this? Well, she has this stick that is probably the length of this table right here, nice size. It's like a tree branch. It once used to be a tree branch, but it's been shellacked and fixed up all kind of pretty, like a walking stick. She jabs this stick into the truck a couple times, babbling something. Don't know what she was saying.
Through the passenger door?
Driver's door. I'm in the driver's seat.
Oh, you're in the driver's door.
Right. Bruce gets out of the truck from the passenger side. He gets out of the truck. He walks around the front of the truck. Well, she said, you the one that my husband spent the night with? I'm like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? Our bag's out of the passenger seat, out through the passenger door, backwards. She says at the back of the truck, itch, I'm gonna do this, itch, I'm gonna do this. I'm like, what are you talking about? She says something about, my man stayed all night with you last night. And I was like, your man ain't stayed all night with me. I have no clue what you're talking about or who the F you are.
Go ahead.
Bruce goes toward her. She swings this stick, and it hits the back of the truck, the top part of the truck. It hits the back of the truck.
Bruce, did she ever hit you?
No.
Never hit you. Did she ever hit Bruce?
No, she swung at him the first time with the stick, and that's where she hit the truck. She didn't hit him.
Did she eventually get back in her car?
Bruce tackled her some kind of way and kind of threw her in the car to where she was on her backside. Bruce was on top of her. She puts the car in drive that she's driving. She runs over Bruce's foot. She puts it back in reverse. She hits him, knocks him down, comes back forward where he has sit down flat, runs over his leg, tries to get out of the tunnel, couldn't get out, hung a U-turn and come back the other way to get out.
Was an ambulance called?
Yes, for Bruce.
Was he taken to the hospital?
No, he wouldn't go.
He's been run over 3 times, according to your story.
She ran over his foot, she hit him, knocked him down, came back forward across him.
Okay, let's go.
I did not hit her truck. We was running around the truck.
What were you doing there?
I came to see who he was with.
Why?
Because I wanted to know.
You married to him?
No. But we've been together 11 years. I wanted to know.
Why were you angry with her?
What she's not telling is that I had called him on his cell phone, and we had our talk or whatever. He didn't turn his cell phone off. So I heard the whole conversation of what was going on, blase scoop, blase scoop. Okay.
So, what are you mad at her for?
I was mad at both of them.
What are you mad at her for?
Because she was with my husband.
Just a second. A, you don't have a husband.
Well, she was with my boyfriend.
Well, so you be mad at him? How do you know
I'm
what he
mad at
told
him
her?
too.
How do you know what he told her?
Okay.
How do you know what he told her?
I don't know what he told her then.
Right, so what are you mad at her for?
Okay. I'm not mad at her then.
And where did Bruce go on the 31st of August?
He went to work, I guess.
And did he come home?
Yeah, eventually.
So the two of you made up?
We made up eventually, but, you know.
He came home?
Yeah, he came home.
Can I see the damage to the truck, please?
And Judge Judy, there's another automobile, my truck, she damaged Monday night, this Monday night.
Just for my information, where was your car or truck that you damaged this past Monday night?
I stopped at my sister's before going home to get things together. It's like 8:45 p.m. Went into my sister's house, came back out about 5 minutes till 9. She approached me from behind this building. I had my 2-year-old by the hand. She walked in front of me. She says, "Now what? Now what? What about tomorrow?" I called my sister's name because she always watches us go to the automobile. I said, "Lauren, come get my baby." She stepped right out of the door, grabbed my baby. "Sandra, what's wrong?" I said, "Just get my baby." Then she sees Lynn. She says, "No, you got somewhere to go. You got a plane to catch. Come on in the house. We're going to call the police." When I come back out with the baby, after I gave the report with the police, come back out to get the baby, the police is in the parking lot next to my Ford Explorer, says, "Sandra, look, my tires are cut and my truck is keyed."
I'm not going to ask her to respond to that because this is a complaint that's still open. But I certainly think that if it's true, Ms. Cobb, if any part of it is true, that if you even saw her on Monday night, you're making a big mistake. Because you want to know something? Old Bruce isn't worth it.
Sure ain't.
I just want you to think. You have children?
Yeah.
How old are your children?
My children are grown.
Well, your grown children don't want to have to come and visit you in a lockup.
Right.
Ms. Cobb, I have to make a judgment, and I have to make a judgment that if someone is angry enough to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, go out in their car and search for their boyfriend, who they believe has been fooling around with somebody else, and they find them in a truck, that if I am to believe you, did absolutely nothing as a result of that. Now, Miss Stewart would seem to me is a relatively normal person. If you had hit her with this stick, as you suggest, rather than hitting your truck, there is no way that the police would have let you go. So I have to make a judgment whether I believe that you did nothing. And I don't believe that you did nothing. I believe that you did something. And I believe that you damaged the truck that she was driving in. Now, the rental car company is charging her for these marks that were made on the truck, $624.65, and I believe that you are responsible for that. And I'm going to reiterate, Ms. Cobb, you don't seem like a bad person.
I'm not.
I don't know whether Bruce is a bad person, but all I can tell you this, Bruce isn't going to be standing before a judge. You are.
Right.
Is he worth it?
No.
Good. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
She's still going to pay for the truck that she damaged on Monday night, but it's all good.
She lied about everything.
We will finish it when we get home.
Judge Judy made her ruling. It's over.
And now the next case.
All parties in the matter of Coker versus Coker. Step forward, please.
Homemaker Wanda Coker is suing her ex-daughter-in-law, restaurant manager Charlotta Coker, for unpaid rent, living expenses, and the cost of a freezer.
Mrs. Coker, the defendant is your former daughter-in-law.
Yes.
Who are you, sir?
I'm her son, her ex-husband.
According to your complaint, you believe that your former daughter-in-law owes you for some rent, for some miscellaneous expenses, and for a freezer that she promised you.
Yes, they had moved back.
Just a minute. When were you divorced from your husband?
It was finalized September 19th.
And when did you separate from him?
December 20th of last year.
And how long were you married?
We were married for 5 years.
Do you have any children together?
Yes, we do.
How many?
We have one.
How old is that child?
He's 6.
Who does he live with?
He lives with me.
Is that correct?
We have joint custody.
Who does he live with the majority of the week?
It's about 50-50.
Okay, so you live close by
Yes,
to each other.
yes.
All right, Miss Coker, you want to tell me when your daughter-in-law lived with you, that you claim she owes you rent.
They came back in June, right after school had gotten out last year.
Who's they?
Her and her 2 children, actually her 3 children, and my son were moving back here to get a divorce because it would be cheaper to move all their stuff together.
And they came to live with you?
She and the 2 kids did. Then she went back along with my son to pack their belongings and have them transported back, but she had left her 2 older children with me.
What period of time do you allege she owes you rent for? Give me the month and year.
From June through December.
June of 01 through December of 01.
Right.
And was she living with you alone or with your son?
No, he was in rehab. He had went to rehab.
For alcohol, I see.
Right.
Judge Judy continues in a moment.
The freezer's still at her house.
I didn't tell her she couldn't have it. I just want to say that it's my freezer. She told me I could have it.
I don't know what you want. You want me to make a judgment as to whose freezer it is? I don't have to do that.
Real cases, real people. Judge Judy. Wanda Coker says ex-daughter-in-law Charlotta Coker owes for rent, living expenses, and the cost of a freezer. Charlotta says she was forced to live with Wanda when her husband entered rehab.
Okay. Is that correct? When you came back in June, he was planning to go into rehab?
He was planning on it, yes. And it was in July
that he went?
When we came back to Wichita.
In July, you came back as a family?
We came back as a family. We weren't coming back to get a divorce. We were coming back as a family, trying to work things out.
And you were going to live with your mother-in-law?
Yes, stay there until we could get a job, get on our feet, yes.
Fine. What arrangement do you claim there was for rent?
When they moved all their things back, she had told me that she had a deep freeze that I could have for part of the rent.
You mean while your son was in rehab?
Right. Well,
yeah, go ahead.
Right.
Go ahead. So?
So in the meantime, when they were here, they had this dog that she had brought back that tore up my back storm door.
What do you mean she had brought back? Where was your son? Did he come back too?
He had came back, but he went into rehab.
Just a second. He came back, and they brought a dog. Is that right?
Right.
All of them as a family. Your son, your daughter-in-law, your grandchild, and her 2 children. They all came back together with a dog.
But then she flew back out and decided she was not coming back to Kansas. She was going to make her home in Washington.
Okay. When was that?
That was about July.
All right. How long was she gone in July?
Probably a month.
So then she came back in August?
The latter part of August.
What period of time, I'm saying to you, do you claim she owes you rent for?
At least 4 months.
What 4 months?
For June, she didn't.
She doesn't owe you any money for June. Get it from him. July? She doesn't owe you any money for July. You haven't told me you had an agreement with her. Get your rent from him. Now, when did she come back by herself?
It was the 1st of October.
She came back by herself.
October. I know it was before Halloween.
She came back October 1st.
It was in October, yes.
Where was he?
He was in rehab.
Okay. And what did she say to you when she came back in October?
She told me that they had that deep freeze that I could have for part of the rent. She could not afford to pay me anything.
So what are you suing her for rent for? You're suing her for rent.
Well, the children weren't my grandchildren. And
so what you have to have an agreement for rent, madam. You don't have it. You didn't have an agreement.
She was the one that told me that I could have the deep freeze for
part of the rent. Not talking about the freezer, madam. You said rent.
That was for part of the rent.
Miss Coker, You're not following me, madam. I mean, I think that your whole lawsuit is ridiculous. You're suing the mother of one of your grandchildren when there is a divorce, and it appears to me that your son and your former daughter-in-law have a reasonable enough relationship to share custody, and you are foolish enough to sue her for a deep freeze. Foolish enough. Now, I don't understand that. She comes to your house. Your son is an alcoholic. He's going into rehab. He's not providing for his family. She has a baby and 2 other children, right? Trying to keep it all together. And you're suing her for a deep freeze? Where is your brain? Where is your mind?
I have proof that the dog tore up my back door.
He brought the dog.
No, he
brought
did
the
not.
dog.
The
Of
dog
course
was
he
not
did.
his. The dog was
Listen
hers.
to me. According to you, they came back in June with the dog. If you didn't want the dog, you say to your son, get rid of the dog. You don't complain a year later and say the dog ripped apart my screen door. You say to your son, you can come back with your wife and the children, but you have to leave the dog home.
He tried to get rid of it.
What?
He tried to get rid of the dog, and she wouldn't let him.
Then you say you all have to leave.
Judge Judy continues in a moment.
Listen to me, madam. You are a very foolish woman. You have a grandchild. I don't know how many grandchildren you have, but it appears to me, I'm going to say it again, these 2 people don't appear to me to be at odds with each other. They share custody of a child, 50% custody, and there shouldn't be any problem with you mixing up trouble between the 2 of them so that he comes to sit to testify on your behalf against her. That's just not smart. So I have heard nothing with regard to rent. She didn't agree to pay any rent. He's responsible for necessaries for his children. He wasn't providing for necessaries for his children because he's an alcoholic and he was in rehab. During that time, you filled in for him. You're a very good mother. Now, let's talk about the freezer. Did you promise her a freezer?
No, I did not.
All right. What did you say to her with regard to the freezer?
Nothing. We brought it over to her house so we could put extra food in it because her freezer wasn't big enough for all 6 of us.
And when you left, what did you do with the freezer?
The freezer's still at her house. I haven't got it yet.
You still have the freezer at your house?
I didn't tell her she couldn't have it. I just want to say that it's my freezer. She told me I could have it for part of the rent.
Just a second. Shh, oh, be quiet. Just a second. Are you going back to get the freezer?
Yes. What does she need a freezer for? There's only one in her family.
Listen to me. I don't know what you want. You want me to make a judgment as to whose freezer it is? I don't have to do that. I don't have to do that. I don't know why you're here, Mrs. Coker. All I can say to you is you better wisen up. You have a grandchild. You want to maintain a reasonable relationship with the mother of your grandchild? I would suggest that you don't get into a contest with her about whose freezer it is. Goodbye.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
Judge Judy continues in a moment.
Well, she's flat lying about it.
She did this all out of spite.
Her dog tore up my back door.
Because I divorced her son.
And also the deep freeze. She had told me that I could have it.
He did tear up the back door, but my husband did fix it at the time.
I feel like that she owed me the deep freeze and fixing my door.
No, I don't.
When they were in Washington, they lived in a $250,000 home and they split the equity.
I don't think anybody owes anybody anything.
So, yeah, there was his responsibility to her because she didn't work day one.
18-year-old customer service rep Stephanie Willis is suing her former friend, 17-year-old student Tiffany Thorpe, and her mother, Hannah Laura Rice, for the cost of 2 checks she cashed on Tiffany's behalf. Stephanie says the checks turned out to be stolen.
Order. All rise. Yeah, this is case number 472 on the calendar in the matter of Willis versus Thorpe. Parties have been sworn in, Judge. You may be seated. Folks, have a seat, please.
Bird, you are going to love this case. Because I read the complaint and the answer, and I found the facts as presented by you 2 young ladies to be fascinating. How are you related to her?
I'm her mother.
Why don't you have a seat for a minute, please? How old are you?
17.
Your mother's close enough, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't feel threatened by me in any way, do you?
No, ma'am.
That's a big mistake. How old are you?
I'm 18.
And this is your?
Mother.
According to your complaint, Miss Willis, the defendant is a friend of yours.
An ex-friend, yes.
Well, she was a very good friend of yours. And somehow she gave you a couple of checks that she asked you to cash for her.
Right.
You went into the bank, you cashed the checks for her. According to you, you gave her the money with the exception of $50 that she had owed you from previously, and then you were notified that these were stolen checks by your bank, and your account was charged for the money, and you want her to pay you back.
I do.
Now, I couldn't quite get everything that you were saying, Miss Thorpe, but according to you, you had stolen the checks, but she stole them from you. 2 checks. And you have no idea what she did with those checks. Is that right?
That's right.
So why don't we start with a story like once upon a time. Once upon a time, I was driving in the car with my friend.
Well, no.
Then just tell me.
Okay.
Let's go. Once upon a time.
Okay, once upon a time, last May 23rd, we were at our graduation practice. She asked me if I could cash a couple checks for her, saying she did not have her ID, and I asked her if she had a bank account she could cash them out. She said she didn't. So, you know, she's a friend of mine. I did it.
When did she give you the checks?
When we were at the bank.
How did you get to the bank?
I drove.
And how did she get to the bank?
She drove.
So you park your car at the bank. We're going to follow this. You know, we're once upon a time. Now, we're once upon a time. You've gone from graduation into the car. She follows you to your bank. You park your car. She parks her car. And you walked up to her car.
I walked up to her car to get the checks. I sat down in her car. Then I went inside and...
So she handed you the 2 checks.
Right.
What did they say?
I didn't pay a lot of attention to what the checks looked like, to be quite honest. I did ask her where they're from, what they were for. She told me that they were back child support from her boyfriend's ex-wife.
At any time previous to going to the bank, did you discuss with her how much the checks were for?
I think I asked her when we got there. They're for $47 each, and I looked.
When you looked at the checks, was that the first time you saw what the amount was?
I don't remember whether I asked her at the graduation practice how much they were.
Well, you're not a stupid person, are you?
No, I'm not stupid. I honestly just
You're not
don't
a stupid
remember.
person because you have a bank account. How much money did you have in your bank account?
At the time, I had $603, and I
So
have
if somebody
my
had
bank statement
asked
here.
you to cash checks for them in the amount of $2,000, you couldn't have done that, right?
Right.
So you had to have asked, well, how much are the checks for?
I don't remember. I was very naive. I didn't, at that point, I did
don't
not
look
know that you had
naive.
to have that much amount in your bank.
Did you
to
hear what
cash
I
them.
said? You
Yeah.
don't look naive.
I don't look now, but I've learned a lot since then. I have.
You mean in the few short months you've learned a whole bunch?
Just about this, about cashing checks, about banks.
Where did you get your money from to put in the bank?
From my job.
What kind of job?
I worked at an ice cream parlor.
So you knew enough to open up a bank account? Did you open it up by yourself or
No,
with your
my
mother?
dad, I've had it since I was 13 years old.
Great,
My
so you
dad
know how
got
to
it
go
for me.
in there?
Right.
So you know how to make deposits? Did you ever withdraw any money from the bank?
I did. Yeah.
Make out a withdrawal slip.
Well, no.
You don't live on Mars.
I didn't. I never used a withdrawal slip at my bank. It was a savings account. All I did was give them my social security number, ask for the amount, and I had to sign.
So what were these 2 checks made out for?
$447.50 each. And the reason I believed her about the child support is prior to this, a month before, she told me she was expecting a check for about $500, and she told me that is what she was going to pay me my $50 back for.
You have a
This was
child?
the beginning of May.
No, I don't, Your Honor.
Well, what are these 447?
I have
And
copies of
shh.
it. I'm sorry.
What is this 447 child support? What is that about?
Your Honor, I have no idea.
No idea. You have a boyfriend who gets child support?
I do have a boyfriend, yes.
Does he get child support?
Yes, he does.
Why does he get child support?
Because him and his wife are separated.
How old is he?
32.
And he has a child that he has custody of?
Yes.
And how old are you?
17.
Who is this?
This is
I'm the boyfriend.
You're the boyfriend.
Yes, ma'am.
How long has this been your girlfriend?
Just over a year.
Just over a year. You don't think she's a little young for you, do you?
I didn't plan it that way, Your Honor.
How much do you get in child support from your ex-wife?
About $50 a week. I have custody of both of my children.
$50 a week for each child?
No, ma'am.
Both?
Yes,
Both children. You get that by the month?
I get weekly. I get it weekly if she put.
Let me see a copy of the checks.
And it's usually in cash.
Your Honor, Eric was the person that the checks were stolen from. I was convicted and charged for checks already.
You were charged and convicted.
Charged and convicted for 3 checks prior. I had stole them. I went down to the police station.
Where did you steal them from?
I stole them from Eric.
Who is he?
An old friend
Of whose?
of mine and my mother's.
How did you get his checks?
I went over there one day and I found them laying outside next to his truck, like they had fallen out of his truck, and I picked them up.
Why?
Stupidity.
And what'd you do after you picked them up?
I had gone and cashed a few checks, and
How many did you cash?
I was charged with 3 of them.
Judge Judy continues in a moment.
Tiffany, that's her, you know, with the belly button showing, advised that Stephanie wanted $50 to cash them, and she was given that amount.
But